Well, it's so good to be with you. I'm Djaka Blais. I'm the Executive Director of Hogan's Alley Society. And we're a Black-led organization here working on advancing the well-being of people of African descent through built spaces, culturally informed housing, and community development. So the area which we refer to as Hogan's Alley was in Strathcona, just a few blocks from where we are right now. And it was a multicultural neighborhood. It had different waves of newcomers coming to the area, whether it was Jewish communities, Italian, Chinese, being such proximity to Chinatown that was developing. And of course, First Nations communities being in the area as well. And it was also where we saw the first nucleus of a Black community forming in Vancouver. People started coming in the late 1800s, and we really saw kind of like the peak growth of the community in the 30s and 40s, with different waves of individuals coming, whether it was from the sleeping car porters that were often Black men working on the train lines and coming for an opportunity to rest at the rooming house that was located in Hogan's Alley, and then seeing this community that was developing there. And in some cases, they chose to come and settle and bring their families to establish here, or it was other newcomers coming from different parts of, some came from Alberta, even moving over for opportunity. And we've seen different waves of community members coming. What we lost when the neighborhood was broken up to build those viaducts was not only the physical structures, the homes and the businesses that people had built, but it was really the cultural, social, and economic capital that people had developed as a community, the community bonds that had been developed. And as people dispersed and moved away to other communities and other neighborhoods, even leaving Vancouver in some cases, we lost that strong community bonds that had been established. And decades afterwards, really didn't see that coming together again. And so as an organization, that's what we've been working on, is recreating a hub for the community that's connected to other initiatives across Metro Vancouver, because we're seeing growing populations in Surrey, in New West, in Burnaby of Black community members, and we're really wanting to be interconnected with those.
That's great. The theme for the 2025 Black History Month in Canada is Black Resistance. So celebrating the ways in which Black people have resisted oppression or discrimination and prejudice over history. Do you see any parallels between that theme this year and the work that you're doing at Hogan's Alley?
Absolutely. I think the work of Hogan's Alley Society is rooted in resistance in the Black community for many generations. And it's resistance not only in fighting against systemic oppression, but also in creating space for joy and empowerment and community convening. Because, you know, when we're fighting against systems that have tried to erase our history or displace people from their homes or communities, just being able to gather again and to thrive and to be connecting as community in itself is resistance.
Yeah. Just prior to the pandemic, there was a report that came out that was called the Unfunded report. And it shared that less than 1% of philanthropic contributions were going to Black-led and Black-serving organizations. And I just want to hear a little bit more from your perspective as to kind of how you felt about that report and, both its resonance, but also perhaps even how it might have started to spur on conversations that clearly are long overdue.
So, the Unfunded report talked about, the limited amount of funding that was going directly to Black-led organizations. And that scarcity of resources meant that Black-led organizations and communities are having to work twice as hard to help their communities, to help advance the goals that they have for their families and their communities more broadly, and to try to make do with limited resources. So the report itself put, numbers on paper and meant that people could no longer just dismiss anecdotal information that people were giving, and really engage in important conversations around how do we work differently with Black communities. Some of that is, about the resources, investing more resources that are directly targeted to those communities, but it's also about the relationship, entering into real, authentic relationships with communities that are understanding their realities and trusting that they know what is needed for their communities and how to partner with them to come up with those solutions.
So in your time, because you've also been heavily involved in other Black philanthropic initiatives in your leadership, have you seen any measured change or distance since that report has come out?
I mean, I'm really proud to have been part of establishing the Foundation for Black Communities, which, was very much connected to the sector and government seeing the gap that existed and community identifying this as a need to be able to withstand, changing government priorities, changing public interest in Black issues, to be able to set up our communities for success long into the future. So that was the purpose of establishing the Foundation for Black Communities. And from that, we've seen, now the foundation launched its national call for funding. It's been able to deliver funding out into community and continuing to grow the endowment itself so that there's more resources that are out there. Some of the challenges is that it's still additional resources are needed for the community because the demand is so significant, and also recognizing that it's important to build a strong ecosystem of support for the communities, not just being dependent on one organization to do all that work. Since the release of the report, and since actually I would say the movement for Black lives, there was a real reckoning, I think, among organizations to see what can we be doing better? What do we need to address? And we've seen shifts in how organizations are intentionally looking to work with Black communities and Black-led organizations, in some cases targeting resources to those communities. And we're also seeing in some cases going backwards and moving away from targeted investments, which targeted investments are in line with taking an equitable approach, which recognizes that there's been historical injustices and historical underinvestment in certain communities that needs to be redressed.
So in looking forward, what would you suggest an organization like ours at the Vancity Community Foundation, what would you suggest our role could be in continuing to push forward that necessary progress to ensure there's greater investment?
I think the role of an organization like Vancity Community Foundation is first and foremost leveraging the platform that you have, right? You have access to a broad audience, you have your community partners, you have donors, you're at tables where other community organizations are not. You're able to meet with government in a different way. And as a funder, you're able to enter into a conversation from a different positionality than a community-led organization. So a role is, first off, listening to what community is saying as the needs, and bringing that to the tables that you're at, and advocating for the additional resources or changes that are needed. Another important role is making sure and looking internally at how your organization works, and removing as many barriers as possible to the resources that you do have access to, and encouraging other funders to be doing the same. It's been interesting shifting from being on the side of being a grant maker to now being in community and trying to access resources, and seeing that how funders work is not always the same. And some are doing a really great job in really trying to get resources out to community in a way that is supportive and transformative. And then others are really coming at it from a quite extractive experience. And so trying to move away from that type of approach is really what helps organizations to focus on the work that they should be doing, which is helping community rather than feeding the needs of a funder.
So, I'm really grateful that you've shared some of the ways we can think about how to do that differently. So, Hogan's Alley Society, tell me a little bit about what it would take for you guys to realize your vision.
So what it's going to take for Hogan's Alley Society to realize our vision is we have a very bold vision. So it's actually a significant amount of financial resources that we're needing in terms of investment and grants and partnership. We're also needing the opportunity to have unrestricted dollars so that we can focus on the community engagement and visioning and development that we're trying to do, rather than focusing on keeping the lights on, keeping people employed. As we're really proud to be one of the largest employers of Black community members in the province, and we take that responsibility really seriously, and want to ensure that people are given the right opportunities with that. And I talked about partnerships. That also looks like transferring knowledge and capacity, being willing to share experience in a way. And we've been really lucky to have some great partners along the way, including Vancity Community Foundation, that have been willing to be generous in sharing knowledge and experience and helping guide us as we are building really great legacy initiatives for our community.
Is there anything else that you would like us to know about the work, about how to better show up in support of Black-led serving organizations? Is there anything that you would like to take an opportunity to tell the community itself that could help us do, be, and give better than maybe we currently are?
There's a narrative that there's not a lot of Black people in Vancouver or in BC.
Yes.
And I moved here from Calgary and had that narrative in mind as well, and have been so pleasantly surprised by how much activity is happening in our communities, and how many people are coming together and finding ways to really, build for their communities, build for future generations, but also who's here today. Yeah. And so I would say it's important to be actively searching for those organizations, often who are struggling with limited resources, who are often struggling for access to space to even deliver great programming that they have, and are, going back to the theme of this year, resisting efforts to erase their presence here. What I would like to see is also a shift in that narrative, to rather than focusing on the scarcity, rather that there is an abundance. There's people who have been here for generations. There's people who are newcomers, and all within that spectrum, you see such a variety of amazing opportunities that they are looking to advance.
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate that. I think one of the things that I really love about the work that's happening too is the focus on the beauty and the brilliance and the excellence and the opportunity that the Black community holds across that diaspora, right? Like there's just so much. It's not about, the picking people up. It's actually about getting out of the way and making sure the resources are there and making sure that people have the opportunity to, self-determine and make the decisions and have the resources that they deserve and should get access to. What are some of the ways in which we can do better in providing funding to organizations like yours?
I mean, we need to see more flexible, unrestricted funding, multi-year funding for organizations. So many organizations are just struggling to keep the lights on. They're primarily volunteer run. People are putting in their own money to run the organization with the hopes that if they bet on a grant opportunity, that maybe it'll help them to advance their commitment to their community. So, seeing more unrestricted dollars that recognize the importance of the actual operations of an organization beyond the project itself, and I can invest in people, giving them the breathing room to, not only have, I'm worrying about the work of our organization, but I also have to work a part-time or 2 other jobs just to be able to do this work that is really important for our community. But also funding's not the only thing. We want to see opportunities to partner with different organizations to leverage the capacity that exists in more established organizations to be able to partner and build capacity. We at Hogan's Alley Society have benefited from some really great partnerships with organizations that transferred their knowledge. That's how we were able to get to a point where now we're the sole operator of Nora Hendricks Places, because we were in a mentorship relationship with an existing nonprofit housing provider that generously shared their knowledge and helped build our capacity and work closely with us with the goal of us serving community better. And then I think also investing in talent, at the end of the day, supporting leadership development, providing opportunities for Black professionals within your own organizations, because if you're investing in those individuals, they can go on to do great things for your own organization, but then for their community as well. Often leaders, the real leaders that we want to be investing in, are doing multiple things in their community, and giving them freedom to do that well is what will see great results for our community.
The Vancity Community Foundation, which was founded in 1989, has been going through a transformation over the last few years, where we've gone from a typical philanthropy foundation to an organization that has been committed to really decolonizing the work and looking at how we can better engage community so that we're providing the resources directly to those who know best how to utilize those resources in order for our communities to truly see the change that is necessary. We have committed to being an anti-racist organization. We're committed to the truth and reconciliation journey that so many of us are on. And we hope that we can continue to bring resources to bear so that we can redistribute those resources and the power that comes with them to those that better know the solutions to our society's problems. The Vancity Community Foundation is committed to working with what are often referred to as equity-deserving communities, or what we refer to as historically marginalized communities that have really been intentionally, in some ways, pushed in to the margins by how our society is set up. And so we are deeply committed to the Black and Indigenous communities and people of color and communities that really are often missed when it comes to contributions from philanthropy. Having been in the nonprofit sector for as long as I've been in the sector, which is close to 30 years, it's been an interesting few years to see how we are starting to recognize that philanthropy in and of itself can actually be oppressive, and that philanthropy comes with its own challenges, and in large part because those that have tend to be able to make decisions for those who do not have. And so we have seen a really beautiful movement in the last few years where donors and philanthropic organizations are starting to have the necessary conversations like we're having today to be able to really recognize that the brilliance in the solutions that are necessary are actually with the people who are actually in those communities and working in those organizations. And that our job is to really just be a conduit to get the resources to where they're best needed.